What's up team? Welcome to Channel Clarico, where we make complex accounting things simple. I'm Andy Wang, and in this video we'll be covering what you need to do and know when hiring team members for the first time. This video will be broken down into a few different parts. Firstly, we'll be covering what admin stuff that you want to have in place. Number two is what to watch out for when you're setting your new team members and employees up in your own accounting system. And finally, what are the tax obligations you need to think about as an employer? Before we get into it though, quick disclaimer. As always, anything finance and accounting related has exceptions and nuances. We'll just be covering the main talking points in this video, and I really highly recommend getting in touch with an accountant and a HR consultant when hiring. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's dive into it. So, you're looking at hiring. Where do you start? In Australia, we have lots of laws in place to help protect workers, and it's an absolute minefield if you don't have good advice. Honestly, most of the time, you might not even know you're doing something wrong or you're not doing something that you should be doing. I can't stress this enough, but I'd really recommend going to see a HR consultant. They can help you get all of the documentation together, as well as making you aware of what you need to know. Some of the admin and housekeeping stuff that they can help you with are things like your employment contracts, confidentiality agreements, formal letter of offers, a proper position description, a form to collect all the details you need to be able to process wages, and what the minimum rates you should be paying your team members. And honestly, that's just to name a few. This process doesn't have to be expensive either, and really a good HR consultant can do most of this heavy lifting for you. With all of the admin stuff sorted out then, what next? Well, you want to make sure all of those details you have in your offer are correctly reflected in your accounting system. Think about your accounting system as like a brain outside of your brain for all of your business numbers. And when it comes to employees, a good accounting system can help you do things like track how much wages you've paid, calculate how much tax to withhold on those wages, how much super to pay, and it can help you a lot of the time actually pay the super, and it can also help you accrue and track things like annual leave and sick leave. And that's just the beginning of it. But like with many things, if it's not set up correctly, it's not going to be super useful. It's going to be garbage in, garbage out, essentially. And worst comes to worst, it could be giving you the wrong info. So when setting up your employee in your accounting system, here are just a few things that you want to make sure you're getting right. Whether they are a casual or a part-time or a full-time employee, this can affect how your accounting system calculates things like leave, so you want to get that right. Next, the tax details and whether they have things like student loan debt. The reason why this is important is because it affects the calculation of wages tax in your accounting system. You want to make sure that you have things like a pay rate set up correctly if you pay different rates for weekdays and weekend hours. Another one is leave loading, and that's one that's often missed. It doesn't apply to everyone, and different employers might have different rates. Make sure you get the details from your employment contracts and set this up in your accounting system correctly. Once again, it can do the heavy lifting for you. And from a reporting point of view, it's pretty useful to have different categories for different wage types to be reported on. For example, if I ran a clinic, I might want to see my practitioner wages separate to my admin wages. And to achieve this, I need to set things up correctly in a certain way in my accounting system. It might sound like a bit there, but most good accounting systems should have easy to follow videos that walk you through all these processes. And if you're ever in doubt, any good accountant can actually help you with this setup. Super worth doing, makes your life much easier. And finally, what are your tax obligations as an employer? Luckily, the list here is a fair bit shorter, and there's only a handful of things you need to keep on top of when it comes to taxes and other compulsory payments. The downside, you have to keep on top of these. Number one is PAYG withholding, or pay-as-you-go withholding. This is the tax that you will need to withhold from your employee wages to pay to the ATO. If you've ever had a job, you'll be pretty familiar with this. This is paid to the ATO either monthly on the IAS or quarterly on the BAS. Number two is superannuation. At the date of this video, the minimum super you should pay is 10%, and it needs to be paid before the due date. The due date for super is generally 28 days after the end of the quarter. That would mean, for example, if we had the January to March quarter, the super on wages during that quarter will be due on the 28th of April. That's 28 days after the end of the quarter. So 28 days after the end of March. And when I say due, I mean it's got to hit the super fund bank accounts by that date. So most likely you'll want to make that payment earlier. And I cannot stress this enough. Make sure you pay your super on time. You get slapped with fines and interest for not paying it on time. And just say that wasn't enough, late payment of superannuation is not tax deductible. Yep, you heard that right. You lose the tax deduction. If you pay super late, you pay fines, you pay interest, and it becomes not tax deductible. So pay super on time. I generally recommend clients to just pay super when you pay wages. That way you won't forget and it'll be done. The third obligation you have is workers' insurance. This is a compulsory insurance that you need to take out to cover the team members if they were to get injured at work or become sick because of their work. It covers their wages and medical expenses while they can't work, and every state has its own main workers' insurance provider, so you'll need to register directly with your state. To help you out, I've actually left a link in the description which will take you to your state's workers' insurance provider. And the process for workers' insurance looks a bit like this. You register with your state, they ask for an estimate of how much wages you actually pay. You'll then make a prepayment of insurance based on the wages you report, and at the end of the year, when that rolls around, you will then report the actual wages you've paid, and your actual insurance premiums will be calculated on this. If it turns out that you've overpaid insurance based on your estimate, you'll get a refund for the difference, and if you've underpaid insurance, you'll just need to pay the difference. Or, to make life easier, you can get your accountant to help you with this. Finally, we have payroll tax. Payroll tax is an extra tax that's also different state by state. I'll leave links once again in the description, which will take you to your relevant state's payroll tax websites. When business owners first hear about payroll tax, it's often the most confusing, and here's why. Payroll tax is a tax you pay for paying over a certain amount of wages. In other words, you get slugged with the tax for employing more people and creating more jobs. Yeah. The good news is though, the threshold for when you even need to consider paying payroll tax, it's pretty high. The lowest threshold off the top of my head at the date of this video is like $1 million, which means your total wages needs to be at that $1 million mark before this even applies to you. So if you're just starting out hiring your first team members, then you don't even need to worry about this unless, say, you're paying that first employee $1 million, in which case this guy is looking for a job. On that note, team, I hope this video has been helpful for you. And as always, if there's anything that you'd like us to cover in a future video, please leave a comment in the comment section. And until next time, peace.